And so you've said that our fight to limit the rising temperature could be won or lost this decade.
Absolutely, yes.
What does that mean? Is it to frighten people? No, it's as real as it can be. And there's all the science in the world to make it.
Yeah, I really like one quote from Barack Obama, who said that
We're the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it.
This decade is a critical decade. The action has to be now. Climate is actually affecting everybody. Renewable energy is booming, and eventually it is a process that will displace fossil fuel.
Welcome to the Climate Insiders podcast, where top climate thinkers, entrepreneurs, and investors share revolutionary ideas and insights. Tune in to learn from the visionaries shaping a sustainable future. Let's dive in. So, Roberta, it's a great pleasure to have you on Climate Insiders. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for welcoming me in your HQ in Geneva. So this is the World Meteorological Organization. How big of a place is this? And
in terms of people, we are about 300 people.
Okay.
And the big office, of course, is the headquarters, but we also have offices in other regions, in South America, in Africa, in Asia. Small offices, just because we are a world organization.
And so you have for a company that has a UN background, you have a bit of an unusual path because you started building a personal brand, which I find fascinating. Maybe you can touch on this just briefly. You decided to do this after COVID, you were telling me, and then you grew your brand somewhat surprisingly, and you became bigger than anyone combined here in the entire organization. So how did you come up with this idea of leveraging content on LinkedIn?
Yeah, well, I came with this idea because I realized that what we do here in WMO and the science and the application and the analysis that we do is very important, but we were not able to communicate to outside our group of people, our experts. And the communication was always really in a way of inside. And I realized that there are a lot of people outside our community that don't know how climate works and why is climate changing and what is the impacts. But they are very relevant because climate is actually affecting everybody. So I started to say something in the LinkedIn and to actually try to be very simple and because I wanted to reach everybody, not just the people that have some knowledge about it. And it just exploded. And to my surprise,
It is fascinating. There's a lot of people putting a ton of effort to make it happen. And for others, it happens quite naturally. It's also a question of timing. COVID was really the explosion of the consumption of this type of content.
Yes.
And then people questioning whether our global organizations were doing anything about it. And so you've said that our fight to limit the rising temperature could be won or lost this decade.
Absolutely, yes.
What does that mean? Is it to frighten people? No, it's as real as it can be. And there's all the science in the world to make it.
Yeah, I really like one quote from Barack Obama, who said that we are the first generation who feels the effect of climate change and the last one who can do something about that. And I think that, this decade is a critical decade. I mean, if we are able to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and we are able to reach net zero, which means what we emit anthropogenically due to our human activity is then absorbed by the nature, trees and forest and the ocean. And then we don't increase the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That is, we are able to stabilize our temperature. And this has to happen now because otherwise we know, and the models, the climate models and the science tell us that if we are not able to do that, we will continue to increase our temperature and all this effect of the global warming, which is increase of extreme events, sea level rise, and all other disaster that can happen. So I think the action has to be now. I mean, our generation has to start to do something to bend this curve.
And suddenly it feels like we've been hearing it for a decade already. But if I were to take the opposite stance, playing devil's advocate, isn't climate change just a natural cycle? There's been ice ages, warm periods, they evolve, and then they follow each other.
Absolutely. I mean, climate has been changing
since day one.
Since day one of the universe, of the planet, of this planet. But scientists tell us that the recent increase of temperature, which is started between 1950 till now, is actually due to the emission of greenhouse gases. And this is because the Industrial Revolution started to burn fossil fuels to create energy. And also, we start to deforestate, to get rid of trees, to give space to land and agriculture, modern agriculture. And this, we start to alter this natural cycle, this natural climate cycle. And that's why we have this trend on top of natural climate variability. But this is a trend, really.
It's a trend, and
it's increasing all the time.
It's very much accelerated, right? It could be normal, natural, if it were spread out over 10,000 years. But here we're talking just a few decades.
We are talking about just a few decades, and we are talking about that when we simulate, the natural variability, the physical world, if we don't add this extra concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we will not get in our model that signal of the increased temperature, which is actually happening, and we can monitoring with our observations.
Now, it is the role of WMO to do weather forecast models. This is your bread and butter. Are those climate models accurate? Is there all the science in the world, the veracity that this is as legitimate as it can be?
Absolutely. So let's distinguish between weather and climate. And as you said, WMO really started as a weather forecast. So we need observation to initialize our models, and we can really go to probably 1 week or 2 weeks, on weather forecast. And then we are now trying to extend this prediction and to actually try to predict what is happening in terms of climate in the next season, in the next year, in the next decade. And also we have projection, which is what IPCC use, which is the physical world initialized with our observation, but also we can think about what is happening in terms of social behavior. All these time scales have a different, of course, uncertainty, in the results. The weather is a small uncertainty because it's, we can actually simulate very well, and with the initial condition, we are now the uncertainty is very small, but more we go in the future, bigger uncertainty we get. But nevertheless, this information for how much uncertainty we can put, I think is useful. It gives an idea of what is going to happen in the future, and especially what is going to happen if we continue to increase the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere as much as we are doing now.
It's good that you're bringing up the micro versus macro predictions, and we know when we watch the TV and the weather forecast, it's over the next week, and the type of accuracy completely changes beyond a week. Same goes for macro versus microeconomics, or macro versus micro environmentalism. The fact that people can have an action in their circle versus having an action in a global system. So in the weather forecast, we're kind of clueless in terms of macro and in terms of very long scale. We just see a trend, but we don't know when it will hit, when the enormous disasters will take place, when the wet bulb 35 events, where the temperature raises above a certain temperature and humidity, for example, in India, we just don't know. Aren't we clueless, or is this something that we have the ability to predict?
Well, we cannot predict, for example, when a storm is going to hit and exactly the timing and the intensity of this storm in next year, for example. So this is the accuracy. We are not at that level, but we can say, for example, that heat waves are becoming more frequent and more intense because of the global warming. We can say that hurricanes are becoming stronger and last longer when they landfall because of the energy from the oceans, which is heating. We can say that precipitation could become more intense because we know that for every degree of temperature in the atmosphere can hold 7% more of humidity, and therefore, they have more capacity of discharge in the future. So we can say something about what could be the next extreme event, the future extreme events, and they don't look good, absolutely. But we are also experiencing this. I think if we compare what is happening now with the past, and we already see these big differences, and especially in floodings and violent precipitation. Europe is
right.
Is very evident, and droughts as well. So we can say not predict exactly the timing and the day, but we can see that we should get prepared to worse and increase extreme events.
Now, who are the customers of the WMO? Is it mainly weather forecast channels? Is it governments that are asking for a plan of actions? Or is it kind of work that's being produced year on year, but lost in the void? Today, no one wants to listen to any more projections. Who actually makes use of it these days?
Well, at the moment, the weather forecast, of course, very important. Governments need it because they can plan at least in 2 weeks in advance for agriculture, for infrastructure, for preparedness, civil protection, and many sectors that really needs the weather. I would say for the climate part, initially it was very important for the negotiation happening for the COP, for example, and the Paris Agreement. All this information, the IPCC, a lot of the data that we produce are used in the IPCC for their climate projections, and these are very important information for the negotiator and decide what would be the policy to be in place for climate change. I would say now other customers are very important for the climate informations, and are, for example, a sector like energy for renewable energy. Renewable energy is an energy that really uses the wind, the solar, and the hydro cycle, the water cycle. So these information are very useful for this sector. The agriculture sector as well for the future. Also tourism sector are using this information, and in general, a lot of companies now has to disclosure their climate risks. So, in order to disclosure their climate risks, they need to understand what is their climate risks in the future, and this means to understand the future hazards, the future exposures, and the future vulnerability.
So it's great that you're mentioning some of the customers. So there's an actual economical, practical use to all this data and reports and an availability of predictions short term to all those industries, right? Agriculture, farming, energy. Now, I want to zoom out a little bit and get your perspective as a climate leader here. And you've built a brand because people recognize they want to hear your messages, but is this moving the needle? Are we putting out more content, more predictions, more reports, IPCC, WMO, you name it, and then it's just landing in an echo chamber? It's the same people reading it, same people liking each other's posts, and then feeling somewhat empowered, but we're not really moving things. And if anything, there's the opposite narrative that's gaining momentum. Looking to make smart investments in climate tech? Subscribe to the Saturday Climate Insider newsletter. Every Saturday, I'll send you one actionable tip to navigate the climate tech investment landscape. Join over 3,500 investors who are already gaining exclusive insights and strategies. Subscribe today.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think I personally, with my LinkedIn post and my social media content, I don't know how much I'm actually moving the needle, and sometimes you get really depressed looking at, for example, some elections, some political results, and I remember one of my last posts was really say, you have to vote leaders that really brings the change in the climate perspective and actually in the climate action. But nevertheless, I think we have to continue because this is the right path. And I hear a lot of colleagues saying that the climate crisis is also a communication crisis. In a way, we scientists, we technical people that have knowledge about the climate and how it is changing, we have also the moral, I think, responsibility to really communicate it as much as possible to the people, at least to be sure that the word is there. And then we cannot, force people to take decision on what we say on governments. We are not a political organization. We are, an advocacy and information and technical organization that try to reach as much as possible with the messages.
Do you feel, with your use of social media and communication, you're a black sheep within your organization? Or do you feel there are more voices arising from within that says this is how we need to talk to people?
I think there are a lot of examples of scientists, especially in the academia, who started really to be more popular in terms of divulgative science and climate change. I'm talking about Michael Mann and Catherine Hayhoe in US especially. Our organization, yes, I think for maybe the first one, let's say the first one, not the black sheep, the first one who started to do that. It is difficult, I admit, for a scientist who has been always raised to talk in a certain way, very, jargon full communication, start to think about how to simplify the message, how to have a narrative that really reach out more to people that have not perhaps the knowledge, the scientific knowledge to understand deeply what is the climate change. But and also, the way of making a story out of the data is a process. I think I started this process years ago. And I really hope, especially the young generation, to pick it up.
Can you give us an example of how you leverage a graph or a prediction or any of the results and stats that you generate into a story?
Well, it's really also connecting to what people really care. Suppose it is the graph of sea level rise. But you can start to talk about how this sea level rise is affecting small islands. I come from an island in the Venetian Lagoon, which is affected by acqua alta, the floodings, regular floodings due to high tides. But now, because of the superimposition of sea level, we have more floodings and more frequent and more severe. So this is how you started to connect. This is what I have experienced in my life, and what is experienced in also some other islands in the Pacific. I mean, I was reading the other day that some islands in the Pacific have already planned to move the people to go to Australia, for example, because their islands in 10 years maybe this is going to disappear. So this is how you connect people with experience of sea level rise with human decisions, and people has to leave their homes. So is a story there.
Who do we need to convince the most? Do we need to convince the masses, people on LinkedIn or different channels, Instagram, TikTok, wherever they are? So to create a general awareness so that as a collective intelligence, we will be able to vote differently. And or have you seen that this doesn't really translate into actual results? And at the end of the day, we need to convince the guys at the top, mainly old white male in control of the big corporates, and maybe lobbying for government elections. What do you think?
I would say everybody has to be convinced, because at the end of the day, who is voting for these leaders that are at the top? I mean, is us. And if we know what we want, and the leaders who wants to represent me and us as a community, then we have the way to change this. I mean, of course, democracy is not perfect, but we can make a change there. And also we can make small actions as well. I mean, like mobility, transport. We can decide, to take the public transport or use an electric car, or to continue to use a polluting car. And we can choose also our electricity in our home. For example, we can choose a supplier that which is providing clean electricity rather than fossil fuel electricity. So there are little things that each of us can do. Of course, more we reach out to the politician and more powerful people, the impact is higher, but we should not think about that each of us can be empowered to make a change.
And would you say that what has the most power to convince people? The few success stories where you say, all right, the government has implemented X policy in Ethiopia, and it resulted in the alteration of the prevention of a future drought. Is it success stories that really trigger people, or on the contrary, mainly fear? Fear.
No, I think is absolutely is successful stories, and this is something like that I come to realize, and I think it's also something that I try to advocate inside my organization, because we tend to produce these reports talking about the state of climate, and every year, is terrible news, because temperature is increasing, sea level rise is increasing, glaciers are disappearing, oceans are getting warmer. So, but I say, okay, what we do with this data, we need also to say something like to have a positive narrative as well, a positive message. The positive message now comes, for example, for renewable energy. I mean, renewable energy is booming, and eventually it is a process that will displace fossil fuel. This is a very good narrative. And I think we need to also look at this positive, a good narrative, and also empowering people to say, really, there is something positive going on, and you can do something about it.
This is what the climate tech community is really trying to do, leveraging innovation, technology.
Exactly.
To disrupt where the polluting industries and displace those most damaging, sectors into the sectors of tomorrow. Do you think this is where the United Nations and some of the sub, organizations have the power to push forward? Or it's completely beyond your realm of abilities?
Well, in terms of what we do here at WMO, I think if we can, with our data, to support, like you say, new technology, like if we can support new technology and a better use of harnessing, for example, the solar power, the solar radiation to generate solar power, and wind, for example, to be able to provide a better forecast for wind, so the companies and utilities that are going to generate wind power, we use our data and provide a better service for the people. These kind of things, I think, of course, we are empowered to do that, and we would like to empower the technology and the innovation to really start to do things in a different way. But the good message, I think, personally, is that renewable energy or new way of thinking about our economy, which is decarbonized, which is sustainable, and which is providing a better sustainability of the world, is a good one. I think there is also a miscommunication or forced miscommunication that we are going to lose, we are going to pay more for energy, or we are going to be worse if we change our economy, we decarbonize our economy. And I don't think so. And especially for air pollution, for example, it's very important. It's going to be good also for our health. To reduce the pollution of fossil fuel, and many other and new better jobs, I think, also for the future. So there are all positive results coming from this more sustainable world.
And I wanted to get personal for a minute. You are aware of the data. You're the source, right? What do you tell your kids? Do you tell your kids to prepare for plan B because we're way past the point of inflection? Or do you tell them that they should become climate warriors and really dedicate their lifetime to fighting and preventing the worst? Enjoying the podcast? Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button now and stay updated with the latest in climate innovation.
Well, I think we are not, what the Paris Agreement said, that we should limit our temperature to 1.5 degree above pre-industrial level. I wouldn't say is a kind of a catastrophic event if we pass it or we get to 2 degrees. Of course, the world is worse. It's going to be worse with this temperature. But we can always do something about it and bend the curve and try to stabilize the temperature and also to use to make the nature the power of the nature solutions to absorb these greenhouse gases and to clean our atmosphere. So I think there is always hope, and this is what I say to my kids. We can always do something, but also get prepared if we are.
So how do we get prepared at the individual basis?
On the individual basis, is to get prepared is to be aware that extreme events are going to be more extremes. Heat waves, especially in Europe, are going to be more extreme. In Switzerland, I would say we are not, especially in Geneva, we are not prepared to these heat waves. I remember when I came here 15 years ago. Summer were not so hot, and now it's unbearable. So we don't even have air conditioning in our house. So
right.
We always need to think about to put air conditioning. And the code for new buildings has to be different to really withstand this new, different future if we are going to increase the temperature as we are doing now. And so this is how you get prepared, and you get prepared also by, maybe with agriculture, to provide information, climate services for the agriculture to change, and other, measures and to get prepared to
Right.
a different future.
The type of conversations I have behind closed doors with executives or venture capital fund managers or people like yourself that are really, really aware. They are at the source, they have all the data, they know what's coming. The kind of conversation goes, so what do we do here? Do we need another passport to go to Switzerland, Canada, New Zealand if shit hits the fan and it becomes unbearable to live in the south of Europe or in the US or most parts of Asia? Because then waves of immigrations will make it completely. It will not be the heat waves. It will most likely be the human waves after waves that are rendering living conditions unbearable. And only a handful of countries, maybe in the Nordics as well, is this what you're already having with your colleagues as kind of conversations? And this is the kind of preparation mentally that you need to be aware of. I would love to get your perspective here.
There are cases already in Florida, for example. Some houses are not cannot afford the new insurance because of the hurricanes, but also of the sea level in the coast, and so people has to abandon their assets, their houses. Now their houses don't value anything because of this, and islands that are going to be displaced because of the sea level rise. And people, as you said, maybe people that have, I won't say rich, but they can move, but there are other people who can't really. So what we are going to do, and it's going to be like problems for the government, for example, to try to solve these new situations, and civil protection also to be able to provide plans for evacuation, for example, if flooding is happening. And we see floodings happening where before it didn't happen, or extreme droughts that, and a lot of workers and agriculture cannot do their work anymore. So this is coming, and we need to think about what we are going to do. And some people can, of course, solve this problem easily. Some others can't. So the society has to help those who cannot prepare to this.
Here's an idea of how to communicate things so it becomes much more relatable to most people. Because right now, when we do weather forecasts at the end of the other side of the world, it's not very touching the heart of most people. When we do agriculture impact, when we talk about the trillions of dollars lost because of floodings, doesn't really hit the right chord. One way to hit the right chord would be to make it very visual on how it will impact their everyday life. For example, if you say that because of a wet bulb 35 event in India, we're more likely, most likely will see 10 million, 20 million people move to Europe, which means that the population, certain areas will become vastly overpopulated, which means that the price of rent, the price of goods, the price of food will triple, quadruple. The fact that we're going to have to live in certain areas in a very, promiscuous way. So those kind of projections where it's scenario building. If, as a result of this increase and then human migration, it happens, which is very likely, right? That's the most likely scenario. Wondering whether making it as relatable as possible beyond just weather predictions would be the right trigger.
Yes, I think so. I mean, just the narrative should be really, this story should be really also visualize what would be the future and how it is affecting each of us. And every geography has a different problems, and every geography is going to be impacted by the climate change in a different way. So it is also important that the message is related to a specific country, a specific areas, and also you need to have this conversation with people, because they need to understand, how there are things that they care, the things that they are used to are going to change.
Right. So it's great that you point this out. For example, in France, the people are very close to their retirement. This is something that we've fought
yes.
really hard to obtain retirement at a certain age, say 62 or 65. But the truth is, if the whole system implodes, there's no retirement plan, right? This is so we can fight as much as we want. If there is enormous waves of migration, which means that we need to support the collective, and then the municipalities need to support millions more people, the whole system will implode. There's no more health insurance. It just doesn't work anymore. The school system will not be able to sustain all this. So that's for France. But if you look at the Middle East, for example, the number one crisis is food security. They have to import everything. Japan has to import everything. They do not have mostly agriculture. The US has a certain other set of problems. So we tweak the narrative to make it, tap the right nerve. Exactly. That seems very close to people's everyday life. That would probably be the most helpful story to tell.
Exactly. And this is sometimes, I think, like my audience is really Europe, because then I can relate more to what is happening in Europe because I live here and I know, the countries But
that's the echo chamber that we should deviate away from.
Yes. But it is good also that there are many people like me in other countries.
Absolutely.
And then they can do the same thing more related to their countries and their people and their community.
Maybe this is planting a seed here, but copycatting or enabling a platform so that more people can just pick up the baton, build up their own voice, their own platforms, their own megaphones. Yeah, it's a great way to use your time.
I would empower. I would empower everybody. I don't have a formal education in communication. It's just something that I did and I developed myself. So everybody can do it.
That's very inspiring. Coming from someone working in a more corporate structure. Let's just face it. The United Nations is not the most innovative place. That you're able to develop your own skill. You take risk. And it is rewarded. Maybe tell us about how it's perceived internally. Is this backfiring, or on the contrary, it's offering new opportunities?
Absolutely, it's offering me a lot of new opportunities. And also it gives me a platform to expand my voice. I get a lot of invitation, which I would never get before, from different sectors, different environments, reaching out to people that I would never reach, being here and doing my job, for example. But it is important because I see that the people are angry not to know more of climate. And this is rewarding for me, understanding that I am touching some chords to people and they invite me to know more of what I know and what they can do. So, and try to inspire people more.
Wow, that's an amazing story to hear. And I invite everyone to take more risk, be it in corporates, in startups, any organization, to build their voice, put themselves out there. And it's very important that, you started from scratch, you developed all this.
Exactly. Yes.
And the final topic I wanted to touch on is geoengineering. So the fact that it's still very taboo in the business and the government world, the fact that we would use whatever is at our disposal to alter the climate to reverse climate change. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we're already doing geoengineering in sort of a negative way. Absolutely. We're emitting greenhouse gases, which are warming up the atmosphere. Are we ready? Is this something that certain spheres are already talking about? To do the opposite?
Yes. I don't think we are ready. I think we need much more study about it. I'm not excluding this as a solution. And as I want to say, we need all kind of the solution, really, to solve the climate crisis. So everything can help. To think about that this is the only solution, that's the problem. And I think we need to, first of all, and the primary solution is to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel and to really reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. This is the first thing that we should do. Then all other solutions will help to accelerate the reverse of the global warming, to be more efficient with our solution, the reduction of greenhouse emissions. But also, natural solution, natural-based solution is very important, and we need to also nurture them and to expand them. So geoengineering is one of the solutions, but I would say we need to be careful to do it in a way that we don't create other problem, of course. Scientists are on studying it, and they will tell us. And I believe in science, or actually, I think science should be our compass to make decision for
Are you aware of any United Nations branch working on sort of plan B or C like this, or involving geoengineering, or it's not in the works yet?
No, there are geoengineering being used. I mean, probably not for climate change, for other things. It's weather modifications, cloud seeds, for example. This is something that is done to modify the weather and to make rain, for example, when they should rain.
Where is it used at the moment?
At the moment, it is, for example, the cloud seeds is used in the Middle East. Is one of the solutions that they have. It's super controlled and
how does that work exactly?
It works like the scientists, the meteorologists, they identify the clouds. That is the characteristic of potential rain. Then they fly an airplane with some rain enhancement. Is powder, particular powder. And if they found that this is in the right location and the right characteristic of the clouds, they start to spread these seeds, and then the cloud will start producing rain.
Wow, I was not aware that it was already in action.
It is already also in China, I think they do something like that. But what to say, this is super controlled.
At a micro scale.
And it is producing, rain when it's needed in the reservoir, for example. And it is not creating, other...
A bit of a butterfly
effect. It is a small
effect.
scale, and it is not creating other problems. What is I think the fear is that when we think about, some geoengineer of reducing the sun radiation and a large scale, we need to study a little bit more to see if is possible, and also if it actually helps, reducing the global warming, and also it doesn't create our problems.
Right. Going back to the micro versus micro impact of geoengineering, we understand at small scale, but at the micro, it's just there's so many factors, and it could quickly go out of hands.
But I think the problem is to think about that this is a solution, and so we can continue to emit CO2 and methane, and we don't need to change anything.
Right.
I think this would be my problem.
That's the preferred solution for all of us.
Yes.
Well, Roberta, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having this conversation.
Thank you.
And thanks for welcoming me here in your HQ.
Thank you very much. And it was a great conversation. And I hope that, this conversation really inspire the people to spread the voice and the message.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ready to make a substantial impact on our planet's future? Join the Climate Insiders community today. We are a group of investors committed to supporting bold, moonshot startups that are tackling climate change head on. Become a part of a new generation of climate investors and help us create a sustainable future. Visit climateinsiders.com to join now.